Well, Oklahoma's African-American journey is tightly woven into the historical fabric of our state. Even before the Civil War, African Americans called what was then Indian Territory home. Some as slaves, but others as freedmen. At the ribbon cutting for the new Honey Springs Battlefield Visitor Center, I was able to visit with the executive director of the Oklahoma Historical Society, Bob Blackburn. Well, Dr. Blackburn, we're here at Honey Springs Battlefield Park, the new opening of this facility, and it really highlights the importance of our black towns are here in Oklahoma and how they really preceded statehood.
It did. In fact, the African American experience is Oklahoma history. It's a part of it. From the very beginning, it's been part of our history. When the 5 civilized tribes were removed to the Indian Territory, they brought with them their African American slaves. And so we had slavery here. We had one Choctaw who owned 500 slaves, had several plantations, 2 riverboats plying the Red River. Rich Jovan, a Cherokee planter, had slaves. So slavery was a part of our foundation story. The difference comes is that after the Civil War, when most of the tribes sided with the Confederacy, they were punished. Whereas Congress, coming out of the war, promised African American, now freedmen, that we will help you with 40 acres and a mule, we'll help you become good Americans. They did not keep that promise anywhere except in Oklahoma. And they forced the 5 tribes to treat their former slaves and their children and grandchildren as members of the tribe in terms of land. And so fast forward through the allotment process from 1898 to 1902, and each of the tribes gave a piece of land to their former slaves, their children and grandchildren. And as those people take their farms, most were farmers, then they settled in fresh land and in good watered river valleys. And you put 30 or 40 good farms together, creating wealth, then you can attract a blacksmith, you can attract a school, an attorney, a newspaper, and you have a growth of town. Well, we had over 35 all-black towns that popped out of this historical connection of the former slaves, congressional policy, tribal history. Towns like Rentisville and Boley and Clearview and Summit, and they go on. Well, those towns prospered because they get their land just as the golden age of American farming is starting in 1898, going to 1918. And as farmers are doing well, they're doing well. Boley gets up to 5,000 people. And it's hosting a big rodeo, and people are coming here. George Washington Carver comes in. National leaders are recognizing what's going on in these towns. Well, the decline begins as agriculture starts to suffer in the 1920s and 30s. The all-black towns start to lose their population. The Dust Bowl migration that people identify with the western part of the state and John Steinbeck, well, people from these all-black towns who couldn't make a living anymore left and would go to Oklahoma City, to Tulsa, Wichita, California.
So what then was the role of the Jim Crow laws?
The first Senate bill filed in 1907, we became a state, was a Jim Crow bill. It was to separate the races, to separate a community based on the pigment of your skin, nothing else. Segregation was a cancer on our society, dividing us, fear, hatred, misunderstanding, lack of opportunity. Fast forward to the 1940s, the effect of the Great Depression, the New Deal programs, World War II. Finally, the black community says we've got to pull a brick out of the wall of segregation. A young girl in Chickasha named Ada Lois Scipio, later Fisher, says, I will enroll at the University of Oklahoma School of Law. Oklahoma courts say, no, you can't do it, it's against the law. Goes to the U.S. Supreme Court with the help of a young attorney named Thurgood Marshall, and they win. For the first time since 1896, the law of the land is that separate but equal is not constitutional. So that one brick is taken out, opens the gates to another case in 1954, Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka, that desegregates public schools. Then you throw in the sit-ins in the 1960s and people like Claire Looper in Oklahoma City. And we're starting to break down the walls that have been created between us. The walls are still there. They may not be as tall, they may not be as solid, but you can see in race relations we still have a long way to go. And we're dealing with this shared memory of segregation, of slavery, of lack of justice and equal opportunity. We have to be aware of the impact of the 5 tribes in slavery, of the all-black towns, of segregation.
And yet, despite all this, these black towns, at least 13 of them, still survive.
And we're working with them. Dr. John Hope Franklin, who was born in Renniesville, became one of America's greatest historians of all time, wrote the book From Slavery to Freedom, was helping us in the 1990s recognize the All Black towns, do an interpretation. We still have conferences, tours of the All Black towns. We need to celebrate that story and do what we can to help the people who still live there.
Now, if you'd like to learn more about the impact that just one person can make on society, I'd like to invite you to visit the value-added portion of our website, where I have the story of the Oklahoma educator Eddie Warrior as told by 3 generations of his family. And we'll also have a story there on Miss Clara Luper, who was a civil rights icon for Oklahoma.